Next awards, we would like to kind of review a little bit. We have trailblazer awardees and lifetime achievement awards, and you can see on the screen the pictures of those 2015 winners. Dr. Dean Ornish and John Kelly for the Trailblazer, Caldwell Esselstyn for Lifestyle Medicine Lifetime Achievement, and Neil Barnard for Trailblazer, T. Colin Campbell and Michael Greger, and in 2018, John McDougall and Wayne Dysinger. Now, last year, John McDougall was not able to be here in order to have the award presented, so we're so glad that you're able to be here today. I so much appreciate John. He's been such an encouragement to me. When I was a young physician, he was already doing lifestyle medicine. He's been kind of a model for me. I remember our very first ACLM kind of scientific meeting. One of the things we young folks wanted to know is, how do you actually make a living doing lifestyle medicine? You know, how do you get paid for it? And John kindly shared with us his business model, and I said, that can work. I can see how that works. So it began to open and push out the borders. And certainly, John he started before most of us, so he took a lot of the flack that the rest of us have been able to live without because of people like what people like him have done. So we're very thankful, John, and we're glad. I know I think we have the award here. Would like to have you come up and please receive that. Come on up now.
George, I carried your book around all day and advertised for you.
Okay, well, thank you.
My friend, thank you.
Thank you. Don't go away. Come on out here.
All right.
Because we want to take a couple of pictures.
Okay, right here. Here, would you like that?
And of course, this evening we have the privilege of having our very own Johnny Cash do a little bit of an interview. We appreciated
Cash? Do I have to sing?
No, you don't have to sing. But please come and do the interview.
Okay.
Encourage us.
Okay.
I think there's a little bit of maybe a video as well.
Yeah, it's fine. Oh, yeah. Susan, I could use that. Well, it's this very special time again, ladies and gentlemen. Every year, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and the Lifestyle Medicine Foundation bestow the highest award and honor a health care pioneer who has advanced the field of lifestyle medicine over a significant span of time, and in the process has paved the way for others to follow. In the past, those recognized on this platform were Dr. Dean Ornish, then Dr. Esselstyn, and then Dr. T. Colin Campbell. And this evening, we have the distinctive honor and joy to applaud and recognize on this stage the recipient of the Lifetime Medicine Achievement Award, and that is, as you just heard, Dr. John McDougall. John? I found it very difficult to put together some kind of an interview as we usually do, because this man has probably put at least 5 or more lives into one life of achievement. an unusual man, a most unusual man. It's just like love, which is sort of a many-splendored thing that is difficult to define, and that's John McDougall. Difficult to define, certainly not in 45 minutes. And so what I want to do, I just want to give you an overview before we have our interview, to give you a frame of reference who this man really is. Board certified internal medicine, an expert in nutrition, clinical nutrition, who has been teaching for 50 years how they can improve their health by making better dietary choices, arresting disease and reversing disease. He is the founder and director of the McDougall program, a 10-day residential program where he takes people with high blood pressure, diabetes, overweight, arthritis, heart disease, and he shows them what a simple diet can do, oftentimes in very few days. And he does it without medication. John has used every means possible to get this word out into the world with his message. Television. For more than 30 years, the McDougall Medicine television program, co-hosted by Dan Matthews on Lifestyle Medicine, has received high ratings, as has his syndicated television program, the McDougall MD program. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a one-day fly. This is 30, 40 years of television coverage to try to reach the American public and beyond. He has been in many, many shows, the Larry King Show, the Jay Leno Tonight Show, the Phil Donahue Show, all of these kind of things. That's where John feels at home. He also has had a syndicated radio program that has been very, very successful. It was very, very quickly syndicated after the first radio interview, when over 100 calls came in inquiring what John could answer that has never been answered before. This is an incredible person with incredible resources. John also, not only television and radio, but also he has a very outstanding website. I think it's the best website where he has archived almost everything that you always look for. This is the health Google man. And he receives about 10 million hits every month. So this is an effort that embraces 200 webinars on health, more than 300 newsletter articles, more than 700 recipes, and more than 300 video clips. He also has been involved in legislative action. He has been very much involved in passing informed consent rules in Hawaii, with the concern in the area of providing proper information, options available in the treatment of cancer of the breast. And he has also been able to have the SB 380 in California passed, requiring continuing nutrition education for physicians. So this man is working on many, many fronts. I also want to point out that he and his wife are the co-founders of the McDougall Right Foods program, offering vegetarian foods for people on the run, people on the go, that are available in more than 6,000 stores and outlets. Now, just in case this is not enough, let me add one more. The McDougalls have also been authors of 13 best-selling books on restoring health. They've worked as a team, advocating a simpler, more nature-oriented cuisine. And please note, the last two books are absolutely outstanding books. They have a special place in my library, The Starch Solution. I wasn't quite sure what you really meant with this, the starch solution. And I thought he should have really said the unrefined starch solution, but that's the way to get people to become interested and intrigued. The starch solution, and then recently, the healthiest diet on the planet. He has also been a syndicated columnist for the Vegetarian Times and Veggie Life for many, many years. But last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, this couple has been the parents of 3 very accomplished children and 7 grandchildren. Is there anything else that you would like to know? Both of these people are twin-engine instrument-rated pilots. They've sailed 2 world-class ocean-going yachts around the Hawaiian Islands for many years. And in addition, John has been an outstanding scuba diver, even challenging sharks in a bait ball and challenging the waves as a windsurfer. Absolutely amazing, wouldn't you say? Now you can understand my challenge of putting this life into a frame where you can get a feel for what this man really is and stands for, and to get it done in 45 minutes. So let me just, after we covered some of the accomplishments, let us just do a little bit of more personal interviewing. Tell us a little bit about the influence that perhaps your parents have had during your childhood years in terms of impacting you in terms of what you have become.
Right. It's been very important. I have to say, I would give all credit to my parents, and particularly my dad. And one of the principles that has made all the difference in my life is the principle of honesty. My parents used to tell me, Johnny, whatever you do, as long as you tell the truth, everything will be okay. And I was a very mischievous kid. So that's a principle I was taught when I was young, and I've never been able to grow out of it. I just, as I see it, when I see something that's the truth, I can't tell anything else. And you'll have to blame my parents. They also taught me that I had limitless boundaries. I could do anything I wanted. And I came from a very low-income family, and to us, doctors were next to God. But I had a mother who wanted to have a doctor for a son. She ended up with a son for a doctor, 2 sons for a doctor, 1 son-in-law for a doctor, 1 nurse as a doctor, and we have a professor of OHSU, a doctor sitting right there that's a grandson. I mean, you better be careful what you wish for. Okay. But yes, my parents are very important.
But you know, with all the interest that your mother had in your future career, your medical education got exposure a little bit earlier than medical school. What happened when you were 18?
Well, I ate the rich Western diet with enthusiasm, I have to tell you. My parents went through the Depression, and my mother had to live on turnips and potatoes. And she said that her children would never suffer like she did. Well, we didn't. When I was a child, I suffered from terrible constipation. I'd be embarrassed to tell you the stories. At 7 years old, I lost my tonsils due to the dairy consumption. At 18 years old, I had a massive stroke. That's one of the reasons I walk with a limp today. I've walked with a limp for 54 years. You should see my jibes, my port jibes. They're really bad. That's a windsurfing term. Anyway,
now, just a minute. I think you were 18 years of age.
Yeah.
Massive stroke.
Yes. I lost the entire left side of my body. I had a lacunar infarct in the right side.
Was that kind of lifestyle related?
Well, I knew it was, but I didn't know then it was. You know, back then we believed it was mononucleosis or something like that, some stress problem. They kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks, Hans. And as I say, we came from a family where we weren't of the quality of physicians. You know, physicians were next to God. And I spent 2 weeks with a whole bunch of gods, next to gods. And I watched them. They would come into my room, and they would ask me, I would ask them, what's wrong with me? what are you going to do for me? And when am I going to go home? And each and every one of them had the same response. They go, I said, I can do that. So after 2 weeks in the hospital, I signed out against medical advice, went right back to school. I didn't even go home. But anyway, at 24, I had major abdominal surgery. They took my appendix out for good measure. I would have been dead or had heart surgery before 30 if I hadn't become a sugar plantation doctor and learned how to practice medicine for my patients.
So that's really interesting. So then you ran into Mary?
That's one way of putting it. Yeah, I went into Mary.
You did. You had a short courtship?
Well, let me tell the story from the beginning. Mary and I met in Al Swanson's operating room, where he was the most famous orthopedic surgeon in the world. And Mary was the only nurse that he could put up with. I fell in love with her instantaneously, and I didn't even see anything but her eyes above the surgical mask. It was okay. We got engaged 6 weeks later, and we were married 6 weeks after that. And I'll tell you why it was fine. It was because of lessons from my parents. My parents told me that I had to be honest with myself. I dated many other young women, and I always knew that they were nice, they were fun, but they were not the woman I wanted to be with the rest of my life. But as soon as I saw Mary and met her, I fell in love, and I knew that she was the one I wanted to be with. The other thing my parents told me is you must marry a happy person, John, because you'll never make her happy. Now, I took that personally, but it has to do with basic human nature. You can't change people.
It's true.
So I had the good fortune 48 years ago of meeting Mary and spending the most wonderful relationships. She's been my best friend for 48 years. And without her help, I would have never been able to develop the McDougall program. And one thing, can I add one thing, Hans? And this is something I only really recognized. I asked Mary, because I wanted to help my patients, to design the recipes, because these were all new. Nobody had really done that before. And she did design the recipes. And as I look back, Mary McDougall is the inventor of low-fat vegan cooking. Now, prior to that, we had low-fat, which was skinned chicken and skim milk. And we had vegan, which was vegetables swimming in oil. So, because of my needs, Mary responded. And she put together the plan of a low-fat vegan meal plan. You can find over 100 websites that offer low-fat vegan recipes now. Thank you, Mary.
Would you mind to stand up? Would you mind to stand up?
Yeah. All right.
So glad that you could be with us. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. So you get married and you end up in Hawaii, and then something happened in Hawaii. Let me show you a little bit of a clip on this young physician in Hawaii.
A young man walked into my office and he said to me, Dr. McDougall, do you think diet has anything to do with the illnesses of your patients? No, I said, absolutely not. And he said, well, how come you're so sure? And I said, well, look, I went to one of the best medical schools in the country. And I said, if it was important, they would have talked about it. And I said, they didn't mention it. So everybody who walked in the office, I would say, what do you eat? Ask them how they live, and check their health over and so on. And I was in a very, very unique situation. I probably couldn't have duplicated this experience in any place else in the world.
In his practice on a large plantation in Hawaii, Dr. McDougall witnessed the lifestyle contrast between different cultures and age groups. The insights he gained there helped to inspire his 2 books as well as the McDougall program.
And what I saw were the first generation who stayed on a diet of rice and vegetables, no medications. They could see perfectly, they could hear perfectly. Trim, healthy, hardworking people into their 70s and 80s and sometimes 90s. Their kids were fat, they had the gout, the diabetes, the blood pressure, the heart disease, the cancers and so on that I had learned in medical school. So that gave me the first indication that disease is really not primarily an inherited thing. The message that I try and get people to think of in terms of properly nourishing themselves is that there's a diet that best supports human health. And that diet is centered around starch, like rice or potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, taro, with vegetables and fruits. And then there's another category of foods called delicacies, which are the candy bars and the cakes and the chickens and the fishes and so on. If you think about it for a minute, that's the way it used to be. Mm-hmm. And you feast on occasion if you're in good health. But if you're in trouble because you've been feasting 21 times a week for most of your life, then you need to stop feasting for a while to get your health back.
Pretty young.
So
Back when I was a kid.
this really augmented your medical education in a most unusual way. Plantation medicine. Can you elaborate on some of these things that happened in Hawaii?
Well, I was a sugar plantation doctor. My job was to take care of 5,000 people under a kind of a feudal, archaic system where they had the managers and the workers and so on. But I was responsible for all of these people along with 3 other doctors. I learned how to practice medicine because I was it. I caught 100 babies. I did brain surgery in the middle of the night. I did some things that made a real positive difference in people's lives, but these were in a category of acute problems, Hans. And acute problems are due to single injuries, like the laceration or the broken bone or the abscess that you lance. And the doctor intervenes in that single injury. It can make a huge difference. But chronic disease is due to repeated injuries, such as that cigarette that goes on 20 times a day or more for years and years and years. The body is always trying to heal. It just can't keep up with the pace of injury. And so the problem that Americans have that I discovered being a plantation doctor was that we're suffering from injuries 3, 4, 5 times a day from the fork and spoon. And even though the body's trying to heal the atherosclerosis and the cancer and get the metabolic parameters in line, it just can't keep up because of the continuous injury. That's all. Your body's not left you down at all. So the first thing I learned as a plantation doctor for 3 years was what a lousy doctor I was. I came from the time of Dr. Kildare, Ben Casey, and Marcus Welby. I knew what real doctors did, and none of my patients, the outcomes were not at all like that. They would never get well. Hans, I used to have a game I would play with my patients. I would give them a pill, and I would say, if this pill doesn't, remember this is a totally supported system by the plantation. So I would give them the pill, and I would say, if this one doesn't work, come back, and I'll give you another one. I never ran out of pills. They ran out of patients. So I didn't think much of myself as a physician. In fact, I, like many of you, have thought about quitting. And
poor self-image.
Well, I could see myself doing no good, Hans.
Yes.
When it came to chronic disease. With acute problems, I could. But chronic problems, I was the worst doctor that you could possibly imagine. So I decided I was going to go back into training when I went to John Burns School of Medicine and became a board-certified internist. But that's one thing they taught me. At first, I had to learn what a terrible doctor I was to open my possibilities, to learn a different kind of medicine. The second thing that happened is I was taking care of first, second, third, and fourth generation, as the film said, Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, and Koreans. My first generation had none of these problems that you folks, we treat. They had no heart disease, no diabetes. In fact, my older Filipino plantation patients in their 70s sometimes, and sometimes in their 80s, would be marrying young brides. They would go back to the Philippines and marry a young bride. And into my office every day would come this family of a gentleman who was, say, 70 or 80, and a young woman in her 20s, and 3 or 4 kids. And I thought, initially, the neighbor's helping out. But it wasn't the neighbor. And not only that, Hans, but these men expected to live to see these children grow into adulthood. Mm-hmm. This was brand new to me. I was inspired, to say the least. And then I saw the kids get fatter and sicker. We had Texas driving up the street, the home of the Malasada. McDonald's came to Hilo in 1974. I was one of their first and best customers. So There was no mystery to me by the time I left after 3 years as to why my plantation, my first generation, was well. They came from lands where they ate rice. 90% of their diet was white rice, and very little meat, no dairy, and fruits and vegetables. That was my first generation. Second generation, they learned a little bit more about the American diet, and I saw the deterioration in their health. And the third generation, which became very Americanized in their eating, they were just as fat and sick as anybody I'd ever seen in any phase of my education.
Huge eye-opening experience for you to observe this, right?
Well, at least I knew you didn't have to get sick as you get older.
Yes.
And then I went back into training to become an internist. And the Queens Medical Center is on the same grounds as the Hawaii Medical Library. So every spare moment I had, I started going to the library, and I would pull off the books on the shelves. I had to dust them off because they were of no value, because the treatments were of no profit. So I would pull all these, like articles by Ansel Keys.
Yes.
I would pull all these different articles out, and I would read them. And that's how I changed. I learned this myself as a resident. And in the process, I almost got thrown out of residency twice because I challenged my professors. I learned not to do that. But so anyway, I had the advantage of the Hawaii Medical Library. As you know, I collected a huge library. After 3 years, I went out into general practice. And then in 1986, I had the fortune of joining St. Helena Hospital, where I worked for 16 years. We took care of almost 3,000 people in a live-in situation and published some data on that.
That's a residential program.
That was a 12-day residential
where you
program.
can monitor what is happening to people as you make...
Hans, they're in prison.
Oh.
They're being brainwashed.
I see.
But they leave thinking this is the best vacation they ever had.
Who brainwashes them?
All our staff. Jeff Novick, Doug Lyle, Mary, myself. You know, we've got them, Hans. We just take and pour it into their heads. And we have people who...
So they come through the door, you lock the door, 10 days, hours.
Yeah.
And things happen quickly.
Immediately. I tell them the first night, which is Friday night, I say, by Tuesday, everything will make sense. But between Friday and Tuesday, we're going to have some tough times. And by Tuesday, you know, they're used to the flamingo going around on top of our resort.
Yes.
They're used to the food. They're used to being off all their drugs. And it takes them really another 5 days to really become comfortable that they're doing the right thing. And that's why the program now is a 10-day program.
Very good.
But my prediction almost always is correct. It takes from Friday till Tuesdays, like, 3 or 4 days. And then the patients turn around.
You know, I understand that very well because, you know, I was with the Pritikin program where we had a 26-day program.
Yes.
And I saw what happens within 3, 4, 5 days.
Yes.
It was absolutely amazing. You thought you had gone to Lourdes, to some magical place. Now, some of the people that perhaps influenced you then in that phase, what would you say? That was Dr. Kempner?
I stand on the shoulders of 4 male mentors. And I really give all credit to them. And they were Dennis Burkett, Nathan Pritikin, Roy Swank, and Walter Kempner.
Okay. Let me show you a film.
But I want to say one other thing.
Okay.
I had one thing they didn't have. Each of them was a much smarter person than I ever could be. But I had one thing they didn't have.
You had Mary.
Mary. I knew all these men. Because, you see, there's one thing to tell you about it, but there's something totally different about making it possible. And Mary made it possible for my patients. And I want to thank you, Mary.
Oh. Let me show you a video that I found that also shows how a young physician, even then, was looking for ways to capture and to archive people that he admired. Let me show you. Hello? Oh. Can we play this?
Today I have the very great privilege to introduce you to the man who opened my eyes about the cause of disease and also the possible cure of common diseases that affect people in our country. This was back in 1971 that I met Dr. Dennis Burkett. Dr. Burkett, welcome to the show. Can you tell me when and what kind of training that you received?
I was a surgeon fundamentally for all my professional life. But over the last 20 years, just over, I switched entirely from trying to cure disease to go 100% into trying to prevent disease. Because it wasn't until I came back from 20 years surgical practice in Africa that I was helped largely by others to appreciate that most of the common chronic diseases filling the hospital beds in Western countries today are rare or unknown in the Third World, were rare even in North America before the First World War, are equally common in black and white Americans, and therefore they have to be due to our lifestyle, the way we live, and in which case they've got to be preventable if we can identify the factors in our lifestyle.
All right, now you discovered the relationship between diet and disease from your experience in Africa and looking around the world. Now, what exactly is the part of the diet that you identified as the cause?
To begin with, we talked about fiber, but then we realized we were far too blinkered. If you look at the diet of disease of the countries throughout the world who don't get the common diseases of Western culture, and when I say the common diseases, I mean diseases like atherosclerosis, diabetes, gallstones, bowel cancer, breast cancer, hemorrhoids, varicose veins, diverticular disease, huge pile of stuff. The countries who don't get these diseases have a diet with far more starch, far more fiber, far less fat, far less sugar, far less salt. And the two major things we need is to eat more fiber and less fat.
When we launched the CHIP program in Canada in 1988, the Complete Health Improvement Program, which was kind of taking the Pritikin concepts into the community and to transforming the society, as I learned from Dr. Pekka Puska. As we did this, I felt the arrows coming from every angle at me from my medical friends and colleagues in Canada. And it was at that time that I invited Dr. Burkett, who was a famous, famous man then. He was. I invited him to come to Canada from England 3 times a year to be my intellectual bodyguard to protect me. And he covered my back very well. Now, so I have something in common there with you.
Yeah.
And that's why I have such a great admiration for you, the courage that you have had over the years, your feisty fighting for the truth that apparently goes back to your father's counsel. Be truthful, Johnny. Tell the truth. And I would like you to know that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe more than that, people that have been benefited from your courageous mission that you have been on with Mary. And I would like to pay some very special tribute to you tonight. If you just sit there for about a few minutes, some of your friends would like to greet you. Hello?
John McDougall is a doctor who became a friend and who basically saved everyone in my life. My wife, my father, my mother, my brother, my kids, even my mother-in-law, and many of my friends. I'm just one person, but Dr. McDougall has had this kind of impact on tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of people. What you're looking at is exponential growth. The impact of one of John's book on me, that's reaching one person, and then each of those people goes out and impacts so many more people on their lives, and the effect just continues to grow and grow. Dr. McDougall likes to talk about standing on the shoulders of people who came before him like Pritikin, Kempner, and Burkett. Dr. McDougall himself has had more impact than all of those people put together. So I want to express my deep appreciation for the blessing of John McDougall. I'm grateful to have him in my life, and without him, my life would have been very different. Congratulations, John.
Thank you, Jeff.
It's my great honor and privilege to congratulate Dr. John McDougall for winning the Lifetime Achievement Award from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. John, I know no one more deserving. For over 40 years, you've continued to blaze the path that we all are following. I know no one with more integrity, your ability to speak truth to power, your courage, your ability to reduce complex ideas to ones that are easily digestible in every sense of the word, and your impact on the lives of millions of people who are alive today because of you, who may not be able to thank you, but I'm here to thank you on their behalf. So congratulations, John, and thank you for being my friend and my colleague and continuing to inspire me and so many others. Well deserved.
It's Neil here with a word of thanks and congratulations to my good friend John McDougall. John, I have to tell you, you may not remember this, but back, I think it was the 1980s, I turned on the radio and it was the Fred Fisk Show on WAMU here in Washington, D.C. And it was an hour-long show and you were the nutrition and medicine expert. And people called in with a million questions, so many that the host said, Dr. McDougall, can you stick around for another hour? And you did. And there was a million more questions and you were so helpful that at the end of that hour, the host said, I've never done this before. Can you stay for a third hour? And you did, and you answered all these questions. You were so helpful and so kind and so incredibly knowledgeable for all these people. You'll never know who they were, but you really helped and inspired them. But the reason I'm saying this, John, is that you've done the same for me. Your work's not done. There's a whole lot left to do, but thank you for everything. Thank you for inspiring me, and thank you for healing and helping so many other people.
John, you have richly earned this high recognition with a lifetime of fierce, courageous, passionate, indefatigable, well, there's just no other word for it, McDougallian devotion to lifestyle as medicine. It's my pleasure and my privilege to append my personal congratulations to all the rest.
Thank you.
It has been a rich privilege to know you, John, and have some association with you for almost 35 years in the rewarding work of changing lives through your health and lifestyle recommendations. The co-hosting of Lifestyle Magazine was always a challenging, stimulating, and even inspiring experience. You were the first, in my hearing, to introduce the idea of a diet of plant-based food. You identified the direct correlation between diet and disease. You came to our show as an honest scholar and practical clinician who never failed to understand the issues, had the right answers, and always fearlessly declared those answers. You courageously called everything as you saw it, no matter what it might net for you as a physician in the medical community. Your articulate ability to convince all of us of the truth of lifestyle medicine has certainly and effectively changed the lives of many more people than you will ever know. You've been a true pioneer, John, and trustworthy voice in helping lay the foundation for the dietary principles of ACLM. So, John, no one is more deserving of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine Lifestyle Achievement Award than you are. I honor you, Dr. John McDougall, and congratulate you on the significant recognition awarded to you by your peers who are also committed to health, wellness, and whole lives.
In 1982-83, I was in need of a kindred spirit, a North Star, the McDougall Plan. Later, I met John McDougall, whose imposing knowledge, candor, integrity, and loyalty sustained his conviction that the seismic revolution in health was possible through plant-based nutrition. It has been my honor and privilege to be John's friend, and I'm just absolutely delighted to see him receiving this award this evening.
My parents have had a profound influence on my career path and how I practice medicine today. I remember when I was a kid, I would travel around with them across the country to different conferences and festivals, and hearing them teach people about how and why to change their diet. Afterwards, many people would come up to them and tell them about their successes and their stories, and I remember feeling incredibly proud. Since finishing medical school and residency, I've had the opportunity to work side by side by my dad, where he's taught me many valuable lessons that I apply to my medical practice daily. Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Hi, Dad. Words cannot express how happy and proud I am of you.
Shoot.
All my life, I have witnessed what courage really is. Standing up for what you believe in, no matter who tells you your ideas are wrong. And thank goodness for Mom. Let's be honest, Dad. Without her, the McDougall program would never have succeeded. No one would eat your cooking. Just as you never gave up fighting tirelessly for the truth to be told, nor will I. I am honored to carry on your legacy with the same staff you handpicked to help you run the McDougall program. Congratulations on receiving this much-deserved award. I love you, Dad.
Jesus.
I'm an eater of potatoes. I eat potatoes every day. They're the reason that I am so trim, and this is what I get to weigh. Hey, 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 John McDougall has a plan based on carbohydrates. If you eat them, you'll be thin and won't have ass or thigh weight. John McDougall, he's the man. He's as smart as Play-Doh. Eating starch will make you thin. Just eat a damn potato.
Hey, Hans. Thank you.
You are loved.
You touched my heart.
You are a real doctor. You're not a...
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
John, these people respect you, they admire you, they see more in you than a medical deity. You're a real doctor with a heart and a soul and a commitment to ethical concerns. When I asked you a few weeks ago, what is your main concern now that you're really retirement age, you said, Hans, if it's possible, could you talk to the board? And could you give me 10 minutes to share with the audience what I really feel in my heart we need to take a look at and maybe embrace as an American College of Lifestyle Medicine? And I want to give you those 10 minutes.
Can I have this is the clicker?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Are we on?
Well, thank you. Obviously, I'm among friends. And your accomplishments can be said in just a few words that Mary expressed to me while we were walking down the hall. There are so many people here. I can't believe it, because when we started, as you know, there were so few. And you have built an army. You built an army of people that will change the world. And that's what I have seen happen. And now this army, I'd like to say, is poised to do some things that are world-changing. I'd like to have a chance to share with you some of the thoughts that have been troubling me for the last 20 years, which I hope I have a chance to express over the next 10 or 20. One thing I hope is that my grandchildren don't say someday, Grandpa, why didn't you try harder? Now, I'd like to talk to you about the future and global warming. And I know this is a very emotional topic, and you all have very strong opinions on it. And so, therefore, rather than proposing this as a possibility for this a huge army of dedicated professionals to take on as part of their mission, I've decided what I'm going to do is a parody of a new college called the American College of Life Medicine. The American College of Life Medicine. So if you become offended or don't like what I say about what I think is important, and you think that I am in some way misrepresenting my association with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, I would like to tell you, I am talking to you tonight about the American College of Life Medicine. Well, okay. Beautiful. Let's go back one. Can you take me back one? Thank you. Montaigne, and I have this as a quote in the beginning of my book, McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion. Montaigne said 500 years ago how an idea is developed. He said, first they say it's probably not true, they deny it. And then what happens is people say, when the proof of the truth is beyond any doubt, they say it's true, but it's not important. And then the final step in the development of an idea is people say, well, the truth and importance have been realized, but it's no longer news. We've been doing this all along. We've always known this. The development of an idea. This all started about 15 to 20 years ago. The idea that we were in big trouble in terms of climate change. And this represents what Montaigne tried to tell us as to what's happening currently in terms of climate change. It wasn't too many years ago that people considered climate change a hoax. There are very few deniers left. I can think of a couple, but I won't mention their names. Today is the second point. This is where we are now. The second point of Montaigne's idea of the development of an idea. And that is, we say that we understand this, and it's important, but it's just too costly. And then finally, tomorrow, according to Montaigne, in the development of an idea, we'll say, it's true and important, and we've known all along, but it's too late, we can't do anything about it. We're no longer ahead of our time, ladies and gentlemen, and certainly this conference proves it. Everybody recognizes this is not a hoax. And we pay no attention, if not ridicule, to people who still stand by that idea. I was first made aware of the problem by Al Gore in his life-changing documentary, The Inconvenient Truth. Al Gore, at that time, when he made the presentation, initially in 2006, he talked about the climate. He talked about how where we are right now is going to be on under 20 feet of water someday soon. He told us about the importance of transportation, about handling electricity, et cetera. But he didn't say anything about the food. Now, that may have been in part to the fact that he was a black Angus farmer at that time, and his diet, I believe his personal diet, was very much an American diet. He, after that, when he realized the importance of food in terms of environment, he became vegan, and you can see he lost a lot of weight. But he made a new documentary called the sequel to The Inconvenient Truth. He again fails to mention food as a playing card in terms of solving our environmental future. Probably the most influential thing that's happened in the last year is Greta Thunberg. She gave a presentation to the United Nations. We decided not to show it tonight, but I encourage all of you to hear this 15-year-old girl Ask why adults have not taken the bold step of solving our climate problems and have left it to us children. And she's launched a worldwide movement that I think will change the world. It certainly focused my attention. But I want to mention that Greta, even though she's a vegan, was not able to convince her mother to be fully vegan. And during her presentation to the United Nations and every other presentation I've seen, she has not mentioned diet to any great extent as important in solving the problems of climate change. During the Republican national debates, as far as I remember, the climate was never mentioned once during the 2004 and 2008 debates. It was never mentioned during the Republican debates. During the Democratic, again, this is not a political point, it's just to bring things into perspective. In the Democratic debates that are going on right now, we have Senator Cory Booker, who's a vegan, but when asked, should people follow your diet, he said no. Yang, he said, so it's good for the environment, it's good for your health if you eat less meat, but you can't force people's eating changes on them. We know it's true. The importance is known, but we can't ask people to do it. A book I would encourage you to read. It really summarizes the association between food and the environment. And it's called We Are the Weather. Probably 20 times in the book, he mentions that he has not been able to give up dairy and eggs and admits to an occasional hamburger. This is such an emotionally, politically charged subject that nobody wants to talk about it. Here we are today. The excuse, at least from this character, is that we know it's true, we know it's important, but we can't do anything about it because it's too costly. And the highest estimate that I've heard is that it will cost $44 trillion to keep this planet alive. When I first started reading about climate change, I read the book by Thomas Friedman, and he said that it would cost as much money to solve climate change as it had cost us to do the Manhattan Project, which is to develop the atomic bombs. And he said, that's just prohibitive. We could never spend that amount of money. Now what people say is it's too costly because it would cost as much money as the Marshall Plan, which reestablished Europe during World War II. It would cost $103 billion in today's dollars. And that's just too expensive to save the world and every living species on it. Well, Bill Gates, he's an environmentalist. He's done a lot in this movement. He could pay for both of those travesties himself out of his own pocket, if that's what it really cost. I think what brought us, most of us, to full attention is the report that just came out in September from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They were very direct. Now, this panel gathers information and makes recommendations. It has no power of enforcement. But what they told us is that we have 12 years left. 12 years. So, all right. I was reading a book on the way over here, and it kind of put into perspective the way I think we ought to be looking at this. And all of you know of Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said that we face the reality of the current circumstances and of the future projections, but we also face the reality that we have the power to choose a positive response to those circumstances and positions. You know, as bad as things are, I can tell you hopelessness has never crossed my mind. I get up every day and I look at Mary and I said, what are we going to do today to make a positive difference? I think we can do it. I really do. But we have to focus on the problem. The problem's the food. The problem, as far as environmental change and the opportunities to fix it, lie with the food. And the food we're talking about is animal products. If you see let's take a look at this brief chart. It delivers the message that I want you to hear. And that is that as far as CO2 production, it's the animal foods that are the main cause. I read estimates that beef is 100 times more destructive to the environment than potatoes. They talk about rice being bad for the environment because the bacteria on the roots, they produce methane. They're bad for the environment compared to what? They hardly make any impact at all. When Livestock's Long Shadow came out, which is a 407-page report by the United Nations, funded by the World Food Bank, or the World Bank, they told us that 18% of the greenhouse gases were caused by livestock. And they compared that to transportation, which was 14%, and we were all overwhelmed by the possibility that food could contribute this much. Well, I was so moved by this and by Al Gore's presentation, The Inconvenient Truth, and the fact that Al Gore had not personally addressed the issue of food, either back then or in 2017, that I wrote an article called An Inconvenient Truth, We Are Eating the Planet to Death. And that was in 2006, so that would be almost 15 years ago. Every conference that I put on, and we would put on 2 advanced study weekends every year, and I invited many of you as speakers, I would bring in people that had a point of view that I thought my listeners would benefit from. And so one year I brought in Robert Goodland. Robert Goodland was the environmental advisor for 23 years for the World Food Bank. And Robert Goodland gave a presentation which is on my website, which you can easily find, which I would encourage you to listen to. Pretty much everything we're talking about today, Robert Goodland was talking about back then in 2013. Robert Goodland told us, first of all, that the United Nations Livestock's Long Shadow really left out too many factors and underestimated the impact of animal agriculture on our environment. And then when they recalculated the whole thing, they decided that it was a contribution of greater than 50% came from agriculture due to animal production, livestock production. So Robert Goodland came to our program and told us that they had recalculated, the World Watch Institute, and experts today, including the book that I showed you a couple minutes ago, agree with his assessment that over half the greenhouse gases are caused by what we eat, particularly the animal foods. Robert Goodland has died since. And then we have the Eat Lancet Commission. And the Eat Lancet Commission came out this January and told us that we don't have much time, and that if we eat mostly vegetables and legumes and grains and nuts and limit our red meat to once a week, that we have a chance. So as I say, you know, we all believe this is not a hoax. Let's talk about what we're really giving up to save the planet. What are we giving up? We're giving up yellow and brown food that is malodorous, distasteful, expensive to persons and planet. It's sickening and fattening. The only way you can eat it is to cover it up with steak sauce or ketchup or so much salt that that's all you can taste. That's what we're giving up to save the planet. No. If we could only save the planet for something important. Is the world worth saving? No. Civilized people take care of their children. All right, my recommendation has been to eat a starch-based diet as far as changing our future. And what I suggest is that people eat approximately 90% of their diet as starch. Why have I come to that recommendation? Because that's what people used to eat, is a diet that was 90% starch. If you look at history, what you'll find that is over 99.999% of people obtained the bulk of their calories from starch throughout all of human history. You look at Central America, we have the people of the corn, the Aztecs and the Mayans, who lived with civilizations for 1,300 years that were based on corn. You go a little further south, you see the Incas in the Andes. They lived on potatoes, except for when they went to battle, they switched to quinoa because it was lighter to carry. If you think of Asia, you think of people who eat rice. There was an article in the 2013 New England Journal of Medicine where they talked about the people in China. And before 1980, 90% of their diet was white rice. And fewer than 1% of the population had diabetes, and fewer than 1% was overweight. In this 2013 New England Journal of Medicine article, they talked about how now China has a population where 12% of the people are frankly diabetic and half are pre-diabetic. So this is what you have to eat instead. You have to eat starch in various forms. Foods that we naturally love because of our taste buds, our sense of smell and sight. Comfort food. So the card we have to play, and what I'd like to share with you and I'd like to help you understand is that that card cannot be played without ACLM. But it can be played with the army that has been developed here or the new college of the American College of Life Medicine. The impact of diet on the environment is huge. We have many reports. Here are three of them that just recently came out. They compared non-vegetarian diets to a reference diet, which is actually a heart-healthy diet. And they found that the semi-vegetarian and vegetarian diets dramatically reduce the production of CO2. Another recent study that was published in PLOS where they compared a generally healthy diet, now this wasn't the typical American diet, to a vegetarian and a vegan diet. And they got a tremendous reduction, as much as 70 to 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the vegans. And then the most recent report on the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science told us that greenhouse gases account for 29 to 70% of the emissions. And guess what? It's vegans that can reduce the production of greenhouse gases by 70% from agriculture. Right now, Al Gore and our politicians are planning on us inventing our way out of this problem. This, to me, seems similar to expecting aliens to land on planet Earth and absorb all of our carbon dioxide and save us. We're making progress, but the progress we're making is going to take decades to get solar power, to get the energy we need, to get the transportation that we need that doesn't rely on fossil fuels. And I would like to mention that there's probably few people in this room who have the technical skills to be involved in these areas to save the planet. But what you are experts on food. And food we can change overnight. I mean, think about it. If we could get Prime Minister Modi of India, Xi of China, Mr. Putin of Russia, Mr. Trump of the US, and President Obama of the United States, if we could get them If we could get them to all stand up, if we could get them all to stand up and tell them what the problem is, what the solution is, we could fix this overnight, or at least make a major impact, and we could save the planet. But it can't be done alone. And at the risk of offending a few people, but hopefully embracing the understanding and love that I've received from many of you, you will find this a worthwhile project to add to ACLM's efforts. Because there's nobody else. If ACLM doesn't do it, who's going to do it? I mean, who else is dedicated to food besides you folks? So thank you very much for the 4th Annual ACL Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank you. So do I? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. John, it's a big challenge that you left with us tonight. It has not been a major focused attention for the organization, but you have given us a challenge to give more thought to it. I know you're concerned about your children. I know you're concerned about your grandchildren. I'm too. But we need to do something.
But Hans, I just want to point out the reality to all of you, and that is if we don't solve this problem, nothing else matters. I mean, all the work you've done with ACLM, you know, all the effort that Susan and Hans and everybody else has put in to educating our doctors to give our populations better health, it's not going to matter unless we get this one fixed. And then, well, thank you.
Well, we are grateful. We're grateful to ACLM's version of Johnny Carson. Our very own Dr. Hans Diehl. We're grateful to Dr. John McDougall, to the Lithuanian University of Health Sciences, to our Donald A. Pegg Student Leadership Awards, to our fellows who we've inducted, and to the recipient of the inaugural ACLM Dr. Ansel Keys Award, Dr. Pekka Puska. This has been a wonderful evening. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to ACLM's board for its leadership. And to all of you, have a wonderful evening. Restorative sleep to you all, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the morning. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.